Last August, I was standing behind my wood shop, sweat running into my eyes, holding a meat thermometer like a man who'd lost an argument with his own good sense. The dial thermometer nailed to the shed post read 96. The gravel in the drive was hot enough to feel through my boot soles. Back corner of that shed, there's a 6-inch pipe coming up out of the ground with a grate bolted over the top of it, and I stuck that meat thermometer down into the mouth of it and watched the needle walk. 96, 88, 81. It stopped at 74 and just sat there, like it had made up its mind and wasn't discussing it further. 22 degrees off the outside air, and nobody sent me a bill for it. Then I ran 2 fingers around the inside of that pipe, and they came away wet. Not damp, wet. That right there is the whole video, and I'm coming back to it before we're done. I'm going to show you exactly how that pipe gets built, what the pipe and the fittings actually cost you at the yard. And the one thing about this whole setup that almost nobody who films it ever bothers to tell you, the thing that decides whether it cools your house or grows a mold farm under your yard and pipes it straight into your bedroom. Folks call it a Canadian well, and it's a real thing, not a YouTube gimmick. No compressor, no refrigerant, no meter spinning on the side of your house. Just a pipe and dirt doing what dirt's been doing since before any of us showed up. My name's Frank. I grew up in a wood frame house in the woods, the same stretch of woods I'm sitting in right now, and I was raised by people who fixed everything they owned because there wasn't anybody else to call. My father, my grandfather, and a couple of uncles who split their time between carpentry and farming. That was my whole childhood, standing around them, handing them tools, getting yelled at for handing them the wrong one, and slowly figuring out how things went together by watching them come apart. Out here, when something breaks, you don't call a man. You either fix it yourself or you live with it broken for a week while somebody drives out from town. So I learned young, and I've spent every year since fixing my own place, my neighbors' places, and a good chunk of the rest of this county, always with my hands, never with a fancy shop or a contractor's license hanging on the wall. So let me walk you through this build in the order I actually do it when I'm out at somebody's place. The intake, the pipe, the depth, the slope, the drain, the wall, the fan, and the upkeep after that. And then I want to give you the part that ought to needle you a little, which is that none of this is secret. It isn't new. The trades have known about it as long as there have been trades. There's just no money in it. You can't sell a service contract on a hole in the ground. Nobody drives out every spring to inspect a pipe. There's no filter subscription, no refrigerant, no capacitor to swap out at $200 a pop. It isn't a conspiracy. Nobody has to get together in a room and agree to keep quiet about it. They just don't have a reason to bring it up, and so they don't. Stick with me because by the time we're through, you'll know exactly whether this thing works where you live. And if it doesn't, you'll know why, and you'll know what to build instead. If you'd rather fix it yourself than pay somebody else to, hit subscribe and give this a thumbs up. That's the only way I know whether folks want more of these. Here's what most people get wrong about this, and it isn't the digging. Most folks think cold rises up out of the ground. It doesn't. Cold isn't a thing that travels anywhere. Heat is the thing that moves, and heat always moves toward cold. Hot air climbs. So when hot air leaves the top of your house, a gable vent, a turbine, an upstairs window cracked open, it leaves a hole behind it, and something has to come fill that hole. If the easiest path back into your house is a buried pipe, then the ground fills it. That's the whole engine. You're not pushing cold air anywhere. You're letting heat leave and picking where the replacement air comes from. The second thing folks get wrong is depth. You'll hear people say it has to be 6 feet down, 8 feet, and if you can't manage that, don't bother. That's wrong, and it talks a lot of good projects out of ever getting started. What actually decides how much this cools is how much pipe wall the air touches, and how long it spends touching it, surface area and travel time. A skinny 4-inch pipe buried 6 feet down will cool less air than a fat 8-inch pipe buried 3 feet down, because the fat one's got more wall and the air's moving slower through it. Deeper dirt is more stable, and that's a real advantage in spring and fall. But depth is the last thing I'd chase, not the first. Get your diameter right, get your length right, and get depth if the digging's easy. Now the build itself. Start with the intake because everybody gets this part wrong and it costs nothing to get right. You want that intake on the north side of the house, the shaded side, under a tree if you've got one, near shrubs and ground cover if you've got those too. Because shade and living plants both knock a few degrees off the local air before it ever gets near your pipe. A few degrees at the front end is a few degrees you don't have to buy off the dirt. Never put it over gravel or blacktop. Never on the sunny side of a wall. Never near a dryer vent. Never near where you park a truck or run a mower. You're going to breathe every cubic foot of what comes through that pipe, so sight it like you mean it. Bring the intake pipe up out of the ground at least 2 feet. 3's better. That keeps splash, mulch, and leaf litter out of it. Put a hood or a downturned elbow over the top so rain can't fall straight in. Then cover the opening with 1/4-inch hardware cloth, and behind that, a fine insect screen. Skip the screen and you're not building a cooling system, you're building an insect hotel. I'm not saying that to be clever, I've pulled apart pipes that proved it. Make both of those removable without tools because you will be cleaning them. Pipe is where I'll argue with a fair bit of what you've probably already seen. Use solid wall, smooth wall, sealed joint pipe, sewer and drain pipe or HDPE. 6 inches minimum for a single room, 8 if you're feeding a whole house and can afford the trench. Do not use perforated field tile. Do not use flexible corrugated drain pipe with holes punched all down the side. And please, do not do what I watched a fella 2 farms over from us try one summer, building a little tunnel out of scrap brick and sheet metal and pouring dirt over the top of it. I understand why it's tempting. It looks handsome when it's finished and it's cheap to build. Here's the trouble with all 3 of those. Anything with holes in it or joints you can't seal is a straw stuck straight into the soil. And soil's got more than cool air in it. It's got water, it's got bugs, and depending where you are, it's got radon gas. You cannot clean any of that out of a pipe you built with holes in it. 20 feet in with a bend in the run, you'll never get a brush down a brick tunnel again as long as you live. My Uncle Walt taught me that rule back when I was maybe 12, standing over a spring line he was digging out behind the barn. If you can't clean it, don't build it. He was talking about a drain line that day, but I've never found a place that rule doesn't apply. Depth and slope come next. 2 feet is your working minimum. 3 to 4 feet is a good target if your soil and your water table allow for it. If you've got shallow rock or a high water table, and out here in the hills plenty of us do, you may be out of luck for the full house version, and I'll get to what you build instead in a minute. Here's the part that matters more than depth. The whole run has to fall in one continuous direction. One slope, no dips, no bellies, no low spots where water can sit and pool. A 1/4 inch of fall per foot is plenty. An 1/8 will do if you're careful with your grade. Water is going to form inside that pipe, and that water is going to go somewhere. The only question you get to answer is whether it goes where you chose or where it wants to. Where it should go is away from the house, down to a gravel sump, or better, out to daylight on the low side of your lot. The way I was shown to do it, and it still holds up, is to bring the intake down into a T instead of a plain elbow. Run the branch of that T toward the house, and let the bottom of the T drop straight into a small drainage pit under the intake. Then slope the buried run back toward that pit, against the direction the air's traveling. Every drop of condensate walks backward and drains out at the far end from your house before it ever gets near your wall. That's a clean setup and it costs nothing but paying attention while you're backfilling. Cleanouts. Put a capped access at both ends of the run. Every one of these I've seen fail has failed because nobody could get inside it to check on it. You want to be able to run a drain brush or a rag on a fish tape from one end straight through to the other once a year and see what comes out on the far side. For the wall itself, core or hammer a hole through your block or your stem wall, sleeve the pipe through it, and seal the gap around it properly. Spray foam to fill it, then mortar or hydraulic cement over the outside face. That's exactly how I did it at my own shed, and it's still tight 15 some years later. Terminate the run into a proper register with a damper you can close, mounted low on the wall. Low matters. Cool air is heavy, it wants to lie down. Let it. For the fan, convection alone will move some air, and if you've got a good tall exhaust path, a gable vent, a turbine, a hot roof pulling air up and out, it'll move more than you'd guess. But I'll be straight with you. Every one of these I've built has worked better with a fan on it. A small inline duct booster pulls maybe 15 or 20 watts, which is less than a light bulb costs you to run. Mount it near the house end so it pulls air through the pipe instead of pushing it. Put it on a switch you can reach, and put a backdraft damper downstream of it so the air doesn't just wander back out the way it came when the fan's off. That wood shop I mentioned, I built that pipe back in the mid-90s, and it changed the whole building. Before that, on a bad August afternoon, the shed would sit somewhere north of 100 degrees, and my wood glue would skin over before I could get a clamp on it. My finish would gum up on the brush, and the gaskets and seals in my old compressor died about twice as fast as they should have. I put a box fan in the window for years thinking that was the fix. It wasn't. The pipe was the fix. That shed hasn't seen triple digits since, and I quit buying compressor seals on the schedule I used to buy them on. I've also put together a free home repair guide, checklists, tool lists, the fixes every homeowner ought to know by heart. It's linked in the description below if you want it. Now let's talk about the science, plain, because this is where you find out whether any of this even applies to your place. Dirt takes a long time to change temperature. A few feet down, the ground sits close to your town's average yearly air temperature, give or take about 5 degrees, and it barely moves through the whole summer. So on a 100-degree afternoon, the dirt doesn't care. It's sitting wherever it sits, and it'll cool your air down toward that number every hour of every day, for free, forever, with no moving parts to wear out. Look up your area's average yearly temperature, and you've got a rough idea what a Canadian well will hand you. Where I am, in these hills, that number lands somewhere in the low to mid-50s. Out in Phoenix, it's up near the mid-70s. In Minnesota, it's down in the 40s. That number is your ceiling and your floor both, and it's the first thing to check before you rent a trencher. Here's the number that gets left out of most of these videos, and it's the one that matters most. Air holds water, and there's a temperature where the air you've got can't hold on to it anymore and starts letting it go. Weather folks call that the dew point. Around here in the summer, on a humid afternoon, our dew point can sit right up in the low to mid-70s. Plenty of the humid southeast and the mid-Atlantic run about the same. Put that number next to your soil temperature. If your ground temperature and your summer dew point are sitting close together, cooling that air down to ground temperature means you're cooling it right to the exact point where it starts giving up its water, and then it rains inside your pipe. That's not a flaw in the build, that's arithmetic. The pipe's doing its job exactly right, the air's doing exactly what air does, and a pipe sitting wet in the dark at 70-some degrees is a growing medium. Mold sets up in there, and the spores don't stay put. They ride the airflow right into whatever room that pipe feeds. I'm not being dramatic saying that. It's the single most common reason these systems get built and then abandoned a year later. And it's why a lot of folks who design for a living will flat out tell you not to build one in a hot, humid climate without treating it properly. There's one more thing I won't skip past. The ground gives off radon. It's a gas that comes from the natural breakdown of radium in soil and rock. You can't see it, you can't smell it, and it's the leading cause of lung cancer in people who've never smoked a day in their life. A lot of hill country and mountain country, mine included, sits on the kind of rock that runs higher than average for it. I'd estimate a good share of homes tested around here come back above the EPA's action level, though it varies a lot house to house. A buried pipe with open joints or perforations running straight into your house is a beautiful path for that gas to travel. That's the real reason I'm hard-nosed about sealed, solid-wall pipe. And if you build one of these anywhere, test your house afterward. A test kit runs about $20, and plenty of county health departments hand them out free. Test after you build it, then test again a couple years down the road. So who's this actually for? If you're somewhere the summers run hot and dry, the Southwest, the high desert, the inland Mountain West, a good bit of inland California, eastern stretches of Washington and Oregon, this is about as close to a free lunch as you'll find. Your dew point sits 30 or 40 degrees below your afternoon high, so your dirt cools that air without wringing much water out of it at all. You'll drop a room 15 or 20 degrees and you'll never wipe a wet pipe. Build it and build it big. If you're up in New England, the upper Midwest, or high mountain country, treat this as a shoulder season tool and a fresh air preconditioner. It'll take the edge off June and September, and it'll temper your winter makeup air too. Worth doing, especially if you're already digging for something else while you've got the trencher rented. And if you're somewhere like me, forest country, humid summers, a dew point that runs up into the 70s, here's my honest answer, and it's the reason I made this video in the first place. Don't run an untreated pipe straight into a bedroom. Not into any room where somebody's sleeping 8 hours a night with the door shut. The temperature drop is real, but you're delivering air that's already saturated, and you're keeping the inside of that pipe wet from May clear through October. What you build instead is the same system, aimed somewhere that can take it. A workshop, a garage, a spring house, a greenhouse, a chicken coop. Somewhere the air's moving through and out, where 105 is the real problem and a little extra humidity isn't hurting anybody. That's exactly what my woodshop was, and it was the best money that building ever had spent on it. If you do want it feeding the house down here, build the treated version. Sealed solid pipe, a steady continuous slope, condensate draining out away from the wall, a real clean out at both ends, a filter at the intake, a damper you can shut, and a switch so you run it in your dry months and shut it down in the wet ones. That's a real system. It's more work than a weekend trench off a video, and it's also the difference between a good idea and a mistake you end up sleeping in. Now the money, because this part ought to needle you a little. A central air system is a machine, and machines fail. It's got a compressor, refrigerant under pressure, a blower motor, capacitors, contactors, a coil that corrodes, and a drain line that clogs. Every one of those is a service call waiting to happen. Around here, a maintenance contract runs a couple $100s a year, and a full replacement system is well into 5 figures now. That's an industry, and a good one to be in if you're the one running it. A Canadian well is a hole with a pipe in it. Nothing spins except a duct fan you can replace for $40. Nothing leaks because there's nothing in it under pressure. It doesn't wear out, the ground's the same temperature in year 30 as it was in year 1. There's no annual visit, no part number, nobody making a living off it, and so nobody's out there advertising it. That's the whole reason you've probably gone this many years without ever hearing the phrase Canadian well. Not because it doesn't work. Because a thing that lasts forever and needs nobody makes for a terrible business. So this weekend, here's what I want you to do, and none of it involves digging yet. Dig one hole, 3 feet deep, anywhere in the shade of your yard, wide enough to fit your arm down into. Drop a cheap thermometer to the bottom on a string, lay a board over the hole, and leave it overnight. Read it around 3 in the afternoon the next day. That number is what a Canadian well will give you at your place. Costs you about $5 in an hour, and it's better information than any calculator you'll find online. Second, pull up the weather app on your phone and find the dew point. Not the humidity percentage, the actual dew point in degrees. Write it down every afternoon for a week. If that number's running 15 or 20 degrees below your hole in the ground number, you're clear to build the full version. If it's sitting close to it or above it, now you know exactly what you're dealing with, and you build the shop version or the treated version instead. Third, call your local pipe yard and ask what 100 feet of 6-inch solid wall sewer and drain pipe runs today. Ask about 8-inch too while you've got them on the phone. That one call turns this whole idea from a daydream into an actual number on paper. Fourth, call your county health department and ask about a radon test kit. Plenty of them hand them out for nothing. Do that one whether or not you ever build this system. And fifth, walk your north side and pick your intake spot. Shade, plants nearby, away from the drive, away from the dryer vent, high enough off the ground. Drive a stake in it so you remember where you stood. Tell me in the comments where you live and what your summer dew point runs. I want the state and the number, both. I read every one of those, and honestly, that's about the most useful thing anybody's ever left me in a comment section, because that one number decides everything about whether this system works at your place, and most folks never bother to find out their own. I've got the full build laid out step by step, the trench detail, the wall penetration, the drain tee, the whole maintenance schedule, along with plenty of other fixes I've worked out over 30-some years of not having anybody to call. It's all in the free home repair guide, linked right there in the description below. I'll leave you with the same thing Walt left me with, standing over that spring line behind the barn with his hands on his knees. In this trade, water always wins. And the only choice you get is where it wins. You either give it a path out, or it finds one on its own. And the one it finds is always through something you cared about. So give it the path. Slope your pipe, drain it away from the house, and put a cap on both ends you can open whenever you need to. What's the worst repair quote you've ever gotten handed? Tell me down in the comments. I want to hear it. Next time I'll show you the trick my grandfather used to keep a root cellar dry through the wettest springs we ever had out here. And it costs about the same as what we just built today. Fixing it right isn't about being fancy. It's about taking care of what you've got, and the people who depend on you.